the music theory secrets of Chrome Gadget were hidden in the title all along. This name wasn't just selected for the technology theme or for the alphabetical stage names. It's also the main mechanism of the song's composition. Now, when you introduce chromaticism into a musical piece, this means we're not just using the normal scale of 7 notes, but we're also using some of those in-between notes too. This concept can get intimidating. You feel like you might need a math PhD, or at least a hazmat suit. But Chrome Gadget gets right to the chrome in the opening chords, with the metallic mystique of this 2-chord vamp. It starts with a basic 1 chord that keeps things diatonic, in that it doesn't touch upon the chromatic notes in those in-between spots. It just sticks to the 1, 3, 5 within the minor scale. It's followed by a 2 chord, but with the 2 adjusted to the chromatic note below it, and we've seen this note in action in desert themes in the past. But we're not just using this note for a melody. Here at the Gadget, this flat 2 serves as the root of a full triad chord. It's right on top of the 1, and if you're not careful, this chord pair can sound kinda stern, because we're barely leaving home base, so there's not much room to stretch our wings. That's why it's remarkable that Chrome Gadget's arrangement is able to overcome this association, especially since the lead melody during this chord makes it a point to touch upon all 3 notes of this triad. Somehow, even that flat 2 sounds friendly. But hold on, if the chord's moving up by a single semitone, why does the bass make it seem like we're moving downward by a tiny inch instead of up? Your ears aren't lying, it's definitely moving downward. So this chord's even more bizarre because instead of having the bass note in normal root position, this bass note is actually the 7th of the current chord. If you think of a chord as a building with notes stacked up in sequence, you have the option to put the bass note on any of these levels, but they're all still the same chord. If you're feeling ambitious, you can reach even higher to the 7th. But it gets much harder to stabilize, because if you were building a big building, would you want the foundation underneath to be the size of this upper portion? Not typically. It can be a difficult balancing act, and pulling it off requires the genius of a Sega composer. If the bass note had gone up with the chord that 1 notch instead, it might have risked too much stern gloom. You be the judge. But this choice to move the bass down instead starts to make more sense when you find that section B key changes down just 1 chromatic semitone to that exact note. Compare this to the key change we saw in Proto-Launch Bass, which made a much larger jump. Counterintuitively, these bigger jumps often have the benefit that the new key shares lots of notes in common with the old key, and this shared DNA promotes a smooth, more natural transition. But moving the key down just this 1 chromatic semitone introduces a scale with 4 new notes. Sonic Team managed to do this beautifully, but exercise caution if you're early on in your composition journey. Chrome Gadget doesn't shy away from this new set of notes, because section B has the most chord variety in the entire track, with plenty of different roots involved. And you'd think this would lead to more active movement in the bass, yet the song keeps playing games to keep the bass in as small a chromatic pocket as possible, which it can do by, again, picking bass notes on the upper floors of each skyscraper above the foundation. This makes the bass teeter back and forth. You edge out Knuckles for the lead, but he manages to overtake you, and so on up until the photo finish. And half the reason Knuckles takes the lead back is because you get tripped up in this level's gimmicks, and the shifting drum rhythms reflect this start-stop progression through each obstacle. Especially compared to Azure Lake, which you can run all the way through without stopping momentum, an ideal beginner level with a stable pace of hits on the snare drum. But Chrome Gadget's hazards put you through the ringer, and Section B especially has a start-stop pattern showing how this stage doesn't allow for a simple stride through. These fluctuating rhythms are a staple of progressive rock, as we touched upon at Collision Chaos, now breaking the boundaries of predictability here in this cutting-edge technology hub, a place where the gears and pistons interrupt you each time the bass takes a chromatic step outside the 4. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. The final section provides some much needed relief, and we transition to it with some excellent musicianship on drums. The composer kept in mind the way it would be performed on an actual drum set, especially when you look at the hi-hat. Over on Mushroom Hill, Artclaw hit the hi-hat consistently to keep the tempo, but left it temporarily for a flourish elsewhere on the drum kit. Some of the more elaborate drum parts here at the Gadget also break from the hi-hat to bang out a transitional snare fill instead. It puts the craft of musicianship in the spotlight, plus an exciting glissando where your hand goes down every note of the keyboard, making for a flashy segue toward the song's final lap. As a reward for making it through this gauntlet of gimmicks, the final section features the easy clarity of the plagal cadence, which is just a sequence of chords 4 and 1, with no chromatic notes in sight. This chord combo is more easygoing than the 5-to-1, because the 5 chord generates tension by surrounding the 1 on both sides. But the 4 chord contains the 1, which helps each chord slide more effortlessly into the next. This has also been called the Amen cadence, because at church they say Amen in the plagal cadence at the end of hymns. Amen, or whatever. When you make it to the plagal cadence in Chrome Gadget's final lap, you made it to Graceland. Time to soak in the captivating wonders of this futuristic landscape, no matter what happens tomorrow. And if it feels like you're gliding on a merry-go-round, you're on to something, because this shares marked similarities with Proto Carnival Night, and they could have been written by the same composer. Both songs have ambitious chord structures that change key multiple times, and comparing section C of both tracks, not only do they both feature the plagal cadence, but both are built on the same rhythmic framework of But unlike the Carnival, this song's complex theming can't bear to give us a purely straightforward conclusion, because even this plagal cadence insists on a chromatic caveat on bass. Instead of a 4-to-1 in root position, it goes one chromatic step from 4 to 3, which works since 3 is part of the 1 chord. The machines in these factories are too strong. Even the simplest of amens comes with a catch. A hypothetical bass alteration to root position on the 4 and 1 instead provides a more robust conclusion. Imagine if they switched the bass to root position in the ending credits medley. But all good races must come to an end, and the key change at the song's loop reveals this track's final chromatic secret. Section B key changed a semitone below the original tonic, with Section C key changing to a semitone above it. Again, showcasing the impressive feat of confining a ton of action within a tiny chromatic pocket. As the song winds down, the bass extends its chromatic descent until it falls down to the original tonic of Section A. The fun's over, and it's back to work at the factory by returning to the starting minor key. The 5 competition stages may not have an overt storyline, but there's an implicit thematic flow, similar to the way songs are ordered on an album. New beginnings and the genesis of life's adventure, the wonders of childhood and the excitement of new frontiers, growing jaded by society's technology descent toward automation, a desert retreat on a spiritual quest for answers and meaning, and a nostalgic look back on it all. And this gadget depot at the center of it all broadcasts a consistent signal on the 5, reaching all districts of the floating island. From a control room that can broadcast and receive the signals on the 5 in the airwaves. Is that an incoming SOS from the mountains?